This is Distant Replay. Welcome into another true crime edition of the podcast. I'm Ben George alongside Mike Noto. And as we always do, we go through an athlete, some big, some you're famous, you well known, you heard of them, you know of them, you followed their career, some that are a little less known, maybe you don't know, you've never heard about them at all. And I think, Mike, for some people, that might be the case for this one. Joe's son is the focus of this episode.
Yeah, so if you're an intent listener to this podcast, you remember the name Joe Son, because remember a couple episodes back, Ben, where we did the athletes with the longest prison sentences?
Yeah.
Well, he was on that list, and he also was a listener suggestion. Okay. So his name sort of came on my radar in both ways, but he is definitely probably the least known athlete that we've covered on here.
Very good. So we're going to go through that today. We're not going to do as much background. I think we're just going to go mainly through the story itself and what happened. It's a pretty dark story, but one that, again, as you recommended on YouTube, and you can leave us a comment there anytime. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please like this video. But, yeah, if you ever have a subject for an upcoming true crime episode on your mind, we'll go in and Mike will do the research. He loves going down the wormhole with this stuff, the rabbit hole, and pulling it out. But we'll do that. But also find us online at distantreplaypodcast.com. We put all of our games that we do on there, so you can go back and watch old games. The full game, the full broadcasts are there on our website. And then also connect on Twitter and Instagram. So Joe's son, Mike, where do you want to start with the story?
All right, just a quick background on Joe's son. He was an MMA fighter in the early days of MMA. So if you're like a really, really super duper MMA fan, you may remember him from that. I mean, I'm saying like he fought within like the first 5 UFC events, right? Not much success. Over the years, he would fight in lower level MMA competitions. He also appeared in that Pride kickboxing tour that they have, which I'm not that familiar with, admittedly.
Yeah.
But where he's probably most known for, if our audience is going to remember him, is he had a role in the Austin Powers movie, International Man of Mystery. And Ben, not to make it sound like I'm one or two dimensional, but Austin Powers movies are not something on my radar whatsoever.
You've watched them though, right?
I've never seen 1 second of any of them.
Wow. That
yeah,
might be the biggest news on this podcast.
Yeah, breaking news, right? All right, but he's in the scene in the International Man of Mystery Austin Powers movie where there's a scene where I saw the scene where it looks like Austin Powers is in a hotel room. An Asian gentleman, throws a shoe at him. It hits Austin Powers in the face, and then this Asian gentleman chokes Austin Powers up against the wall.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I've seen the movie, but I don't remember that scene.
Okay, so that's the scene he's in. That's Joe's son, all right? But again, failed MMA fighter is probably the best way to sum up his sports career.
Okay.
All right? So the incident why Joe's son is so known in true crime circles is basically an incident that happened in Huntington Beach, California in 1990. So what I'm going to do is go through the incident, go through the investigation, and then go through his trial and another incident he was involved in as well. Okay?
You said 1990?
Yeah, so 1990. So when I'm describing the fact that he was in the Austin Powers movie and that he was in MMA, all that stuff took place after the crime he was involved in.
Okay. So that's even more interesting then, yeah.
And you'll see how this all ties together here as I go through it.
Okay.
All right. So as I mentioned, we're starting off on December 23rd, 1990 in Huntington Beach, California, right? There's a lady. Now, all throughout this story, anything I read or saw regarding this crime, the victim is never named. So that's why I'm not giving her a name or attaching a name to her, just to give you a heads up, okay? A lady's coming back to her Huntington Beach, California apartment after a night of going to see Christmas lights. Remember, it's December 23rd, the time where you're getting in the Christmas spirit, all right? Mm-hmm. She lives in one of those big apartment and condo complexes, actually like you used to live in, Ben. Remember when you had the condo and then there was a parking structure like underneath the condo?
Right, yeah.
Okay, so is that kind of set up, all right? Now, while she got out of her car, now she's walking from the parking garage to get into her apartment building. You ever have the feeling, Ben, that someone's watching you?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay, so she has the feeling, this is in the middle of the night, she has the feeling someone's watching her. Before she can really see who's watching her, a man pops out, startles her, and is asking her for directions to the beach. And he's doing it in like a really strange way. He's like, hey, can you give me directions to the beach? Can you give me directions to the beach? Like repetitively saying it. Okay.
Yeah. Odd.
Very odd. And then another man pops out of nowhere. So now the men are on either side of her. Okay. One to her front, one to her back. That man pops out smoking a cigarette, flicks it to the ground, and before she can react, they pounce on top of her. Now she describes these men as one being a Spanish male and the other being an Asian male, with the Asian male being the one who's calling the shots. Okay, the one, the ringleader, if you will, the more aggressive one, as we'll come to find out. Basically, the reason she knows the Asian one is the one calling the shots is the Asian man becomes very specific about, after they pounce on her, what they're going to do to her. When I say specific, he says something to the effect that they're going to murder her, mutilate her, and throw her off a cliff.
Damn.
So this is right from like word one here. So obviously now this woman is petrified.
Yeah.
Right? Now she's kind of doing something where she has a dog. Like, you know, I've never had a dog either. So another breaking news here.
Wow.
But you know how some people, some people have small dogs will, like, if it's cold out, they'll like wrap their dog in like a jacket or something.
Yeah.
And you may not be able to see the dog. Well, at this point, she's holding the dog, and her dog, who they can't see, these men, the dog she's holding bites the Asian guy in the wrist, and it startles him. You know, like something startles you and you back away?
Yeah.
Like, man, what was that?
Right.
Well, when that happens, she tries to run away, but they catch up to her by like pulling her hair and bringing her back and just start beating her up.
Damn.
Like viciously, both these men beating her up. They tell her that if she makes any more noises, they're going to shoot the neighbor that hears her right in front of her. So they're like pointing the gun in the windows and saying, if you wake any of your neighbors up in this apartment complex, the one that hears you, we're going to shoot them and kill them, and we're going to do it right in front of you.
Yeah.
Right? To kind of scare her to be quiet.
Right.
From there, they throw her in a car. Okay? They put her in a car, and they're really badgering her about remember how I said how the Asian man said, we're going to take you to the cliffs and throw you off the cliffs after we murder you? Well, they put her in the car, and they're asking her where the cliffs are. Never been to Huntington Beach, California, but assuming they thought there was cliffs somewhere.
Yeah.
And she says she doesn't know where the cliffs are, right? She has no idea what they're talking about, where the cliffs are, because in her mind, I heard her in a couple of interviews. Again, they didn't say her name, but I did see her interviewed. She said, well, I'm not going to like tell you where the cliffs are so you can bring me there and kill me and throw me off the cliffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
Presence of mind, for sure. She said she doesn't know where the cliffs are. So literally what they do is they pull over right in the middle of a residential street. Okay, the way she describes it. Like they pulled in front of someone's house. They order her to get undressed, and then the Asian male rapes her for the first time. This is literally in the car in a residential neighborhood. Jeez. Okay? Then the other man, the Spanish gentleman, rapes her also. The Asian male is really sadistic and, again, being very specific about how brutal this attack is going to be for her. Like she isn't scared enough, He's kind of, with his words, scaring her even more. He tells her that he's always had a fantasy. This is after she's been raped twice, okay? He tells her he's always had a fantasy about raping someone with a gun, okay? Now, mind you, he's already showed her that the gun is loaded, right? In order to scare her, at first when they apprehended her, okay?
Yeah.
So now he proceeds to rape her with the gun.
Jeez.
And the whole time, again, she's kind of recounting the situation here. And she's not only worried about getting raped with the gun, but now this whole time she's worried about it going off,
Yeah, I can imagine. That's disturbing.
So she goes through all of these ordeals, okay? Now, she's not like she got knocked out and this is happening to her. Like, she knows, she's fully aware of everything that's happening to her. When that's done, he rips her out of the car. The Asian male rips her out of the car, tells her to get down on all fours on the sidewalk, naked, okay? When he's about to shoot her in a random kind of occurrence, the Spanish guy throws a jacket on her. And when the other guy is like, what are you doing? Why? Like, he was literally just about to shoot her. The Spanish guy said, I was just giving her the jacket because she looks cold, man.
Oh, gee.
Right?
Oh, wow. So nice of you.
And then now, I don't know if the Asian gentleman had a change of heart or maybe he was never planning on killing her. The Asian male then gives her a countdown. She thinks it's a countdown to her death, basically. And he says, 3, 2, Merry Christmas, bitch, run.
Damn, it's dark.
Okay? So she, naked, obviously takes off. She's running through different neighborhoods, different wooded areas, to try to look for any house to get to for help, She runs and eventually ends up at a house where they call the cops. Now, she's just been through this terrible ordeal, but she tells the police officers, okay, I want to go back to my apartment complex, and she says, because I want to look for my dog, And at the same time, they're like, okay, we can go there and you can tell us like what happened, where it happened, things of that nature. Okay, so this is before they go to the hospital, because she has some severe injuries, which I'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
They go to the apartment complex. Now, what happened was, remember when I told you when the dog bit the man's wrist?
Right.
Bit the Asian guy's wrist?
Right.
Well, she like threw the dog to the side, so the dog didn't get hurt. And when she goes back to the apartment complex, she's calling the dog's name. The dog's not answering. She thinks like she killed the dog when she threw it or the dog ran away, and she's like heartbroken.
Yeah.
But then out of nowhere, the dog comes back. The dog is like shrieking somewhere, like behind a bush. She calls the dog's name. The dog comes to her, and it's like a feel-good moment within like a terrible story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She said like the cops were crying when she was like reunited with the dog. That's how emotional it was.
Right.
Okay. Now, what they also are able to get from the scene is, remember I had told you how when one of the gentlemen had come out of the darkness, he was smoking a cigarette?
Mm-hmm.
Well, she remembered where it was, so they took that for evidence.
Okay. Good.
The cigarette. Now she goes to the hospital. She has like very severe injuries. And remember I had explained how they were like beating her severely? Well, this guy, like, he tried to like gouge her eyes out. So like she had all scratches all over like the top above her eyes, like her eyebrows. Like picture of like, just picture if you tried to gouge your own eyes out or if someone tried to gouge your eyes out, you'd have scratches all above your eyes.
Yeah. Can't picture
She had like that injury plus like a mountain of others, in addition to all the sexual assault, all the sexual assault marks she had all over her. Now that's the crime. I know it's brutal. Okay, it's one of the more brutal crimes that we've discussed here. So the next step here, Ben, is to get into the investigation.
All right, Mike, let's stop on that note. What we're going to do is we're going to come back with part 2. It's going to be about the investigation, all the details into that, and how eventually Joe Son went to work for Hollywood, had a career in the MMA before he was ever found guilty of these crimes. It's a pretty wild story and a pretty fascinating look into the technology advancements over the last 3 decades and how this story all comes to a conclusion. That'll be next on Distant Replay, part 2 of the Joe Son true crime story.